Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be breaking down the super exciting event coming up this weekend, UFC Paris. The UFC goes to Paris every year. The crowd is always absolutely electric. Paris, France in general, is one of those places where MMA is really igniting, and you see on this card especially like how much young talent France is producing as a country in mixed martial arts, and the guys coming through are so well rounded. France even has a really good promotion, Aries, which feeds a lot of these guys into the UFC. And like I said, they're one of these nations who are really leveling up and providing some really cool young prospects into the sport. This event is pretty loaded with young French talent. The main event is a really high stakes fight in the lightweight division. God of War, Benoit Denis, looking to avenge his most recent performance, his first loss at lightweight against the Diamond Dustin Poirier, where he was finished. And he's going to be taking on Moicano, Renato Moicano, who is in his correct division now at lightweight and has found some really, really good form as of late. He's coming off 3 big wins in this division. His debut at lightweight was against Rafael dos Anjos. He came into that fight on short notice, and that was a 5-round fight, and he earned himself a lot of fans that night. I remember that being a really, really entertaining fight, just in the fact of how much damage and how much punishment he was able to take, In this contest, I think it's going to be a really interesting style matchup because Moicano is a really slick grappler, has really, really good jiu-jitsu, great rear naked chokes, has a really good ability to find the back, really long arms, long limbs, and can find his way to the takedown pretty well to get it to the ground. On the other side, Benoit Denis, he's a real brute. He's an absolute powerhouse. His first fight, he came to the UFC and debuted against Aleski dos Santos, and he showed his heart and his chin in that performance because he was absolutely walloped around the cage that night. But got to the final bell and then came down to his proper division and was on a really good streak, beat some really good guys. His power in not only his hands but his rear leg, especially that rear left kick, the roundhouse to the body, and even to the head, the one he KO'd Frivola with, who's actually also competing on this card. Yeah, so he has a really nice rear leg roundhouse. He throws that with a lot of power and bad intention. And coming back to what I said before, him being such a brute, him fighting power forward. The guy does have some good techniques, but based on his background, if you know his story, sort of, he was deep into the French military, like a special forces divisions. I think it was sort of similar to like being a Navy SEAL in the US. So that guy's been through a lot, and you can almost see it in the way that he fights. He fights with such bad intentions, bringing the fight every single time, and no wonder he has the nickname God of War, because he brings it every single time. In his last fight, it was his first loss at lightweight to Dustin Poirier. Now, he looked really good for the first round and a half, but started to gas. Put Poirier in some really bad positions, took him down constantly, has really good takedowns against the fence. But after that first sort of round and a half, he started to really slow down. And his recklessness, his want to put himself in the line of fire to land his own damage, is what got him caught that night against a really crafty veteran in Dustin Poirier. I know he had some staff going into that fight as well, so he talks about that being the reason that he slowed down. So it'll be interesting to see in a 5-round main event if it sort of goes long, what sort of pace he's able to implement, because the guy fights from the first bell like you owe him drug money or something. Like he's on you. He's coming to get you straight away. So Moicano being super tough, having the ability to sort of roll with the punishment. He's very hittable. He does take a lot of damage, but like you saw in his last fight against Jalen Turner, he was able to take that punishment and turn it around. And once he was done being the nail, he was able to be the hammer and win that fight, in pretty good fashion. So really interested to see how the styles clash. Saint Denis is a pretty big favorite going into the matchup, which I can understand why. But you never know how a loss, especially a knockout loss like that only 7 months ago, is going to affect someone. So that fight is going to be super, super exciting. And I think the crowd is going to be absolutely up for it. Co-main event features two young prospects in the middleweight division who are both on a bit of a surge. Nassourdine Imavov versus Brendan Allen. Imavov most recently finished Cannonier via strikes. And I thought that was one of his best performances. He looked really calm, really composed against, a pretty scary veteran in Jared Cannonier. Was able to stick with it, find his range and timing, and once he did and found the hands, it was night over. The guy's a really good sniper. He's got really heavy hands. His range management mixed with his athleticism and his kicks proves to be a really, really tough matchup on the feet for anyone in this division, I would say. On the other side, Brendan Allen is more of a grappler. He has quite a grappling heavy approach. Some of the best rear naked choke ability in the division. He's got a lot of finishes that way. He has a really good ability to find the back, good scrambling, really nice takedowns, good cage control. And his striking is developing, in his last fight against Curtis, he didn't look like a fish out of water like he has previously in fights. The guy's got a lot of experience in the UFC, 14 fights, and has done a lot of growing and developing. So this fight is going to be a real high stakes sort of crossroads battle between two up and coming guys at middleweight, where the winner moves on and, is in that top 5 level looking at a title shot. The loser, it's a pretty big rebuild. So I'm really, really super interested to see how these two match up, and whether Brendan Allen his control is going to be enough over 15 minutes to get him the judge's decision. Because Imavov, I think he has more ability to do the damage, but as we've been seeing recently, judges are really favouring control, even if it's not supposed to be like that in the rules. So super interesting co-main event. This card is full of really interesting matchups that have a lot of weight between, young guys coming through, which is always super exciting to see. And I think the energy that the crowd's going to provide will only amplify the fighters' performances. So like I said, there's lots of young French talent coming through. A few guys making their debut. Another few guys who have had some fights in the UFC and are always performing to a high level, So Joe Anderson Brito is also on the card. Another guy who's really surging at featherweight. Brazilian who has absolute bricks for hands and some super, super solid grappling to back it up. He's a really scary dude, and he's taking on another young French prospect. So that's going to be a really exciting matchup. Definitely keep your eye on that fight. Another fight I want to circle back to is ZM versus Frivola. These two guys are also young. Frivola's, had a lot more experience in the UFC. He's had his ups and downs. So has ZM. ZM has a really interesting striking style where he's able to nullify, what you're wanting to do and really control the pace of the fight. But Frivola is an absolute madman. So, again, that's another one to keep your eye on because anything can happen in that fight. Frivola being the powerhouse, swinging wildly, and ZM being the more technical striker who's looking to keep it on the outside and play his game. So lots and lots of really exciting fights on this card. Kevin Jousset is a French prospect fighting out of City Kickboxing. Now, this guy, I have watched him on the regional scene a lot before he got into the UFC, and all of his teammates, Izzy and co, all speak about how high level this guy is. He's only showed that in the UFC so far. Really interesting prospect. He has great grappling, great control. And I think it's a really exciting fight between him and Brian Battle. Jousset continuing to show City Kickboxing's evolution. You know, they had the top dogs, Dan Hooker, Adesanya, already come through and make a name for themselves. But you see with Navajo Sterling, guys like this is the next wave, and I think he's going to really show the evolution not only of himself but of that gym in this fight against Brian Battle, who's good on the feet. He has really nice high kicks. As you see, he had a great high kick knockout, but he's shown to be controlled before. And I think if you're looking at paths to victory, that's Jousset's clear, obvious path to victory. So I think look out for Kevin Jousset, really exciting prospect who I think is going to do great things in this division. All up and down this card is fights to keep your eye on. I think we're getting a real treat with this event, not only with the matchups, but with the energy of the crowd. These crowds in Europe are just different. They bring such a crazy extra layer of energy into the place, and the fighters can really pick up on it, and you see it in their performances, and you feel it watching it a million miles away. So I'm really looking forward to taking in that energy of the event. Super interested to see what happens at the top of the card with those two crossroad fights. And I look forward to breaking them down and providing some official predictions a bit later in the week. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and we'll talk soon.